Morning, everyone. Oh, yeah, I can see you all. Hello. My name's Hilary Knight. I'm a cultural consultant normally based in London, but working in the UK and all around the world. And I'm really pleased to introduce you all to Rachel Parent from Hub Montreal. Yes. So I think you can read the billing and for this session. Montreal is an incredibly thriving and vibrant city for the creative industries, for creative and cultural businesses. And one of the things we're really curious about is why and what goes into that, what are the ingredients. But before we sort of tip into that, Rachel, I wondered if you'd like to just talk a little bit about Hub Montreal and what it is you do.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. So I'm here with my colleague, also Olivier, who's head of international development in the room. So we're both here from Hub. Hub Montreal is the international event market for digital creativity that was born basically in the festivities of the 375th anniversary of Montreal, the city in itself. They wanted a place where they can showcase all the creative studios and artists of Quebec on an international market. So we bring together about 150 international guests to Montreal every year during a 3-day event where we really maximize kind of B2B meetings and kind of all connection activities, workshop, and talk about what's happening right now in our industry, and really trying to push forward new business relationship and new business development. And so this was our 8th edition a few weeks now ago, where Hilary was here. And we really try to consolidate a lot of relationships and a lot of business connection, and that generated us about more than 16 million revenues in terms of new contract deals, new business development on an international scales. And it's a key important meeting and business point, I think, for the whole industry now in Quebec, but also internationally.
Fantastic. And so that's Hub particularly, and then we're going to move on, we're going to talk about the city. But so that you've got some images in your mind of what it is we're talking about while we talk, we're going to run a little bit of video. Okay, so the pretty pictures are going to carry on while we're talking, but so that we're making best use of time, we're going to carry on chatting. We can see them here as well. It's not remotely distracting. So we can see these incredibly vibrant visuals, and we're going to hear about the culture. But the first thing people want to know about when we're talking about culture and creative industries, and particularly how these sectors build up, is where does the money come from?
Yep.
So we're going to try and address that first. And I suppose I'd like to go back in time first and sort of talk about the genesis of this.
Yeah.
And so where did this all begin? How did Montreal become what started this kind of burgeoning creative industry?
Project? Yeah. So it started with Montreal, but also the Quebec government. A few years back, we signed a law about the tax break based around movie production, but also gaming industry and VFX. And that brought a lot of talents, but also a lot of movie production in Montreal, especially. And so we had a whole expertise that was developed around that because, money-wise, it was kind of really interesting for that. So a lot of funding went also into the ecosystem and into the industry, coming from outside with movie production, but also coming from inside with the tax break and also the help from the government. So that was kind of where it started. And then after it kind of continued to develop into some grants of public funding, both from the Quebec government, but also really from the city of Montreal, both from the Minister of Economy, but also the Minister of Culture, and then both financing projects, but also the companies in itself, the business development. And so it kind of really started, and that's what built the full ecosystem. And now I would say we're the lucky ones that are quite bigly funded with the governments. We don't know if it's always going to be like that, but for now we're quite lucky with this. And the government has helped this full expertise that now also brings a lot of economic revenue into the city. So now it's kind of a circular vision a little bit that we have in terms of financial and kind of policies as well.
Yeah. And I'm interested that there's the city strategy 2030 kind of builds on that foundation. So there's some continuation as well. It's sort of the policies that started years ago with the tax breaks are now being iterated on.
Exactly. So since the tax break kind of brought a whole, I would say, movement around culture, now our city of Montreal in the plan of 2030 have basically 4 key orientations that everything kind of is based around those, so actions and decision of the city. And one of them is kind of the stimulating innovation and creativity. So we do have a strong emphasis on that. And so the city of Montreal is really trying to make sure that we keep that orientation one of the main, a little bit of objective for 2030 as a city. And so giving a lot of financial help within that, but also driving some types of organization. So they're helping both the innovation and the tech side with driving financial help through projects, but also through organization, like, for example, Mila, which is an organization for artificial intelligence that was started by Yoshua Benjo in Montreal. And so the city of Montreal gives a lot of money to that. They give also to creative ecosystem a lot of money through financing project, but also financing organization, like for us, for example, in Montreal. And then also what we're talking about a little bit this morning is that the city of Montreal is also trying to be a catalyst, and I think that's the difference maybe for us, to bring also both those ecosystems, so the innovative and tech and the creative ecosystem together. And so there are also financing projects that are collaborative projects between those two sectors and stimulating that connection. And this is kind of what put us on the forefront of this whole industry, really.
So it's sort of funding for technology and for creativity, and then also for where those two meet.
Exactly.
And I found it really interesting when I was out the times I visited Montreal, there's this kind of origin myth around some real kind of anchor creative institutions that are the foundation for this. And Cirque du Soleil comes up in every conversation.
Yes.
And I was really struck whenever you talk to a new, or not even a new, but you talk to an organization who are kind of pitching their VR thing or their immersive experience, you're kind of like, where did you start? And they're like, I started Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil or Moment Factory.
Exactly.
So these kind of two significant organizations which stay in Montreal. They're still there.
Oh yeah, headquarters is there. They want to be there.
But they are also incubating.
100%. Cirque is now moving a little bit because, but they still have the heart in Montreal. And Moment as well. And it's funny that you say that because everyone in the industry that even is starting a company, we call the school of the creative industry, which is Moment and Cirque du Soleil, and everyone goes there. And they're incubators as well. And they've also have attracted a lot of talents that comes to Montreal, but also a lot of business opportunities to Montreal. And they kind of drive the ecosystem because as well, they collaborate a lot with the ecosystem. So for example, when Moment has a big gig, a big project, they will go on the next corner of the street to hire the best soundman, but from Montreal. And this is kind of think of the origin of sort of the strength of this collaborative ecosystem in Montreal, and a little bit why and how all the businesses, so we're the best in sounds, we're the best in VFX, we're the best in everything because we're working together, and the sense of identity as well, that we want to make projects 100% Quebec as much as possible. And this is one of our strengths, I think, really, of helping the others. So yes, there's Moment and Cirque du Soleil, but they're helping startups and others, and now they even have funding and research development inside of their own facilities for younger kind of new startups coming in. And so it's kind of all circle, and the city of Montreal also helps them to fund those kind of R&D projects within their own facilities as well.
Yeah. And I'm really interested in what you said there about the culture of Montreal and the identity, because you can certainly feel it. And Manchester and Salford are places that I think of as having kind of a similar kind of rich local cultural identity. Yeah. And in Montreal, I was really, really struck by everybody knows each other. There's lots of collaboration. Yeah. It doesn't feel like, but I'm from the outside. I'm on the outside. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of competition, friction. Maybe I got that wrong. You can tell me. But yeah, it feels like a scene. Yeah. And how much of that comes from the geography and the kind of just the local culture of being Quebecois?
So to go on competition, we use a word that we love in Montreal, and it's co-petition. And I think that's a great word because, we do have some competition and it's normal, and I think it's healthy, but also we all know the strengths of the others. And we've seen even at UB where there are some clients meeting some companies, sometimes they're like, well, we might not be the best for you, but we know they are the best. And I think because they want to encourage so much the Quebec ecosystem and our identity, that they're really giving to the next one and working together. So co-petition is really a word that we love to use. And yeah, for the sense of identity, I mean, culturally, Quebec, in Canada, in Montreal, we have our language, our French language, and we're really keen to keep it and really trying to make an effort out of it. And Montreal being the center in Quebec as well. And there's this kind of culture that, we're the only ones in Canada that speaks French, or we're trying to stick together. And there's actually the study that I was talking to you a little bit earlier about, there's this scientist that is a professor at McGill, and that studied basically neuroscientists and studied the fact that since we're a bilingual city, that's maybe why we're more creative. Because since we're always thinking about French and English, and we're always thinking two language and trying to find reasons in that, then that's why we're kind of creative city. And I think that's really interesting because it is something that sets us apart on the market, being both the culture, I would say, of maybe more European, but having the face of North America and the American kind of side. And that's kind of our strength and the culture that we have in Montreal. And maybe just Montreal in itself, the culture there, I mean, it's amazing in a way. I'm maybe biased, but it is amazing. And we have festival even in the snow, -30, or in the hot sun during summer. And we've always said, and I think Montreal likes to see as well, that they are the playgrounds for the creative studios. And that's something that's really important, that they've kind of understood how helping the creative studios to kind of build projects within their own city is going to enhance cities and enhance their own city, and then after help the whole R&D process of the creative studios from Montreal, while helping attract, tourists as well, or being beautiful as a city in itself.
Yeah, and there's a lot that happens out in the public realm.
Yeah,
there's lots and lots of street art. There's lots and lots of installations out in places like Quartier des Spectacles. You've got actual kind of places in the city that people can gather that are designed really to be creative, cultural, immerse people in that kind of
100%.
space.
And that's kind of one of the initiative as well from the city of Montreal. They wanted to make sure that, for creators, sometimes a whole administrative structure when you go to grants or when you try to pitch a project to a city, it can be quite complicated. And so they kind of now finance some institution or organization like Quartier des Spectacles to take some of the administrative out of the whole creating process. And so Quartier des Spectacles have some grants from the city of Montreal to even co-produce some public installation with artists and studios inside of the city of Montreal, and then after export it internationally. So they're really also trying to helping different organizations kind of promote and help producing those projects, especially in public installation, because it's enhancing the whole city at the same time, but also in different, I would say, like key places like La Sat, for example, with the Dome, or 5 centers. They're really also helping those places to generate some revenues and help create projects locally.
Yeah, I was really struck by how many organizations are kind of artist-led, are creative-led, and this sense of artists becoming entrepreneurs. How much is that driven by like necessity, and how much is that actively cultivated?
I think I don't know the percentage of the difference,
but
I think numbers. I know factual, but I think one thing that's special about our ecosystem is that we have a lot of artist entrepreneurs and not business or tech entrepreneurs out after bringing in artists, which is a big difference, and it's also really important then for incubators to get the right tools for artists to build companies, because some of them are just 100% creators.
Yeah.
They've never done a budget in their life. They've never
Exactly.
done anything. So when they have after studios that are doing shows for U2 or at the Sphere and others, you do need to have the whole structure. So there's a lot of organization and incubators that are helping those artists become more entrepreneurs and see it more as really like a business kind of revenue, but without taking the artist first approach, which I think is an approach that is special also to Montreal, because we do encourage that way. So the artist sometimes after goes and go get the technology, but not so tech driven as some cities can also be more oriented.
So sort of taking the artistic idea and then wrapping the business skills and the facilities around
the tech side of things and just switching it together for sure.
Yeah. And so I feel like we've been a little bit tourist board for Montreal. So how about, going out into the world, taking Montreal out to the wider world? We've talked about sort of attracting in tourists and attracting in talent. I suppose one of the things we haven't touched on, there's a lot of interest in bringing people into the city to bring their skills in. There's a little openness to immigration, but also in terms of distribution and international partnerships.
Exactly.
How much is that sort of actively fostered by Quebec, Montreal? How much is that have to sit with the companies themselves?
A lot. So the government is really, both Quebec government and the city of Montreal, really helping to export and distribute those projects and the creatives and the expertise as well as the creative studios. So we have a lot of studios that are also more services based, so they will also help into the exportation of the service and not just the project in itself. And so the city of Montreal, in their own kind of culture sector, they have someone that is taking care of the whole international development of the projects and of the studios and of the creators and the artists. So they're helping them financially with grants, but also helping them with seeing where they could go, different types of collaborators as well, and really trying to build a network. And that's also what our Quebec government is doing with the different delegation. And we do have one also, the Quebec delegation of London right there, who are also voices for the Quebec ecosystem in different cities and different regions to really help export those projects and those expertise. And so this is also, I think, a luxury that we have from the Quebec government to really help us artists or creators and others to export, because they do see after the positive impact that it comes back to us. Because if, the big names like Moment and Cirque du Soleil had such a big visibility internationally, it brings back after some people to come to Montreal and be like, I need that expertise, but maybe Moment isn't going to be the person for them, but they're going to have a bunch of other artists or creators able to help them with their projects. So it's kind of like a circular, I would say, help, but they're really trying to push us forward and exporting. And Montreal is a little bit like we're built to help that and be a platform for that. So that's kind of our goal every time that we travel, but also all year round to really help exporting that knowledge, those projects, and also starting more and more to think about distribution network and co-production as well, because I think that that's something that's coming more and more, because yes, we're lucky enough to have a lot of government funding, but it's not forever and it's not always the same amount every year. So I think more and more now we're seeing how can we go into co-production, and that's something that also our government has been helping us to understand and finance also a lot of more co-production.
And by co-production, you're talking about international co-production.
Exactly.
Hat tip, everybody.
Yeah.
So this is about also building kind of international networks of collaboration and kind of these ecosystems. And I think it's really interesting thinking about how the funding within the city, the structures for the city and for the state in Quebec, and the culture of Montreal kind of keeps organizations rooted in the city, but also distributing far and wide and bringing things back, rather than what you see in other places where you're sort of exporting an entire company or your company is bought and taken somewhere else.
No, they want to stay in Montreal.
It's very much about this kind of circularity. Yeah. And I suppose we talked a little bit about talent pipeline coming from Cirque and Moment. Where do you see, what are your hopes and dreams for where this might, for the sort of future of this? I didn't ask you this question. I'm throwing this one at you now. What do you think the future holds?
I mean, I think for our ecosystem in Montreal, we're collaboration, I think, more and more. And I think we have some amazing new companies that are starting up, and the big ones like Moment, just that make sure that they can keep having the financial help to also be able to, has the place for Moment, but have this place for smaller startups that are starting now, and just having kind of always that collaborative ecosystem aspect. And I think that's really is the most important part and what's making Montreal different. And also what people are coming in for, because when you come to Montreal, you can get the best in VFX, the best in sound, the best in everything in one place. And we're also all in the same freaking neighborhood. So at the corner of the street, you can have 6 companies all in the same building. Yeah. And so I wish I would continue like that. I think also proving that we are important for the economic revenues of our little Quebec province. It's still a lot of work to prove that, and we're still, the mix of bringing innovation technologies into a cultural center. Still now, the Minister of Economy and the Minister of Cultural and Communication, they're like, we don't know where you are. We're like in the middle, so we're still trying to see where we fit. And so trying to get also some better funding to serve us well, in the sense that we're talking a little bit about that. Just about a year ago, the Minister of Culture changed the whole approach of how they were financing companies. So instead of financing projects that every time you need to have a big project to be able to keep your team, they're financing the whole business strategy now and developing IPs and making sure that throughout the years now you're going to have a business where you can have people, not just freelancers, but real people in your team and have them for a long time, and just making sure that the business in itself is going to develop. So I think finding new ways of funding also, I think, would be really interesting. And of course, just continuing going international and collaborating with everyone.
Excellent.
Of course.
So there you go. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.
I hope that's given you all a flavour of the city and how it works, but also the sort of desire for Montreal to sort of build and invest and be part of an ecology and an ecosystem of international collaboration. So come and find Rachel and Olivier in the rather generous coffee break we'll be having later.
Thank you so much. Thank you.